This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to the MacJury on MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have an all-star MacJury panel this time around. I'm really looking forward to talking some things over with these guys. We'll talk about the topics in a minute, but first, let's find out who you're going to hear from. First up, very far to my west, is Mr. Ted Landau. Ted, it's great to have you back, as always.
Yes, I am back.
You are back. You are back. Next to my northwest, Mr. Jim Tanos. Jim, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
That's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And the new guy, last but not least, Mr. Mark Gurman. Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
So we all know, Ted, where you're from. Jim, let's go back to you and talk about what you hail from right now.
Sure. You can find me every day at Tech Review. That's TEKREVUE.com. And I also occasionally write for the Mac Observer.
Great. And Mark, I'll let you introduce yourself, even though probably everybody that's watching this probably knows who you are, but just for the record.
I work at a website called 9to5mac.com and write about Apple and, everything that comes with Apple, all the surrounding companies. So.
Yeah, not much at all to talk about, right?
Lots to talk about.
Well, guys, there are two main topics tonight, and we'll start with the Apple topic. Apple dropped a new iMac on us this week, and it's an entry-level Mac. In fact, some people might say it's below an entry-level Mac. And I'm kind of curious to see what you think about this. Who is this for? And maybe more importantly, why at this point do we need a Mac, an iMac that comes in at $1099? Jim, how about if you start us off?
Well, I definitely think that appealing to a lower price demographic is always a good thing, as long as Apple can maintain the quality, and I think they have here. And the other thing is you're looking at it as an entry-level product, and it is, although it's funny you use that term below entry-level. Not that you believe that, but you're quoting some people who are concerned today. We have to remember this is basically the chipset from the entry-level MacBook Air. And most people don't consider that to be below entry-level. It's an entry-level product. But it's perfectly fast enough for running day-to-day tasks. It's going to run Mavericks and Yosemite just fine. There is some concern about the RAM situation, which I'm sure we'll get into. But if you're the kind of person who's sitting there and you're concerned about the performance of this product, it's not for you. I mean, this isn't something where a professional who needs a lot of horsepower is going to invest in. It's something that somebody who's considering a desktop over a laptop but just doesn't want to go to that $1,300 price point, they can get in and save a few $100s. Now, I think $999 would have been a better psychological price point, but it's Apple. They're going to do what they want to do, and I'm sure some consumers will now have this as an option for them in their budget.
Just for the record, I'm really didn't intend to quote anyone when I said below entry level. I guess in my mind, below entry level when it comes to a Mac was the way I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. Mark, how about you? What's your take on this?
Sure. I think it's an education play. At the $1099 price point, basically they're shaving off $200 from the formerly entry-level iMac, which was $1299. And in business setups and education setups, these are being bought in bulk. So let's say I or you, we just were choosing between an iMac, a $200 difference for one machine. It's not a huge difference. But if a company is buying 20, 30, 40, or 50 of these things, that $200 times the amount of machines really adds up. So it's a really big value saver if you think about it from that perspective. Interesting
idea. Ted, the new iMac seems to be pegged as, being a little, it is slower. It's got, not as much RAM. I mean, it's got not as much of everything is what it amounts to. Did we need this to satisfy, you think, the analysts, or do you think this is a genuine play, like Mark said, maybe for the education market?
Well, I don't think Apple does anything to satisfy the analysts. So why they did it, that isn't the reason. I tend to agree with Mark that I think it'll be a success in markets where they buy large numbers of computers, like education, that I believe is at least part of what Apple had in mind when it released it. For the rest, I mean, it's a little bit befuddling to me, I guess, in the sense that it has, as we just talked about, the internals of a MacBook Air. When I'm looking at a desktop Mac, generally speaking, I mean, this is me. I'm looking at something. I'd like to think I'm going to get something that's better than a laptop. That's part of the reason I go to a desktop. Laptops are confined by the small space that they all have to fit in. There's more space to fit things in a desktop, and so I expect the machine to take advantage of that and provide me with some more power, some more memory, and so on, a faster processor, and to see essentially a laptop hardware put into a desktop Mac, especially when you consider that most people don't buy desktop Macs anymore anyway. I think the consistent statistics now are even for Apple is that 75 to 80% of their sales of Macs are laptops. So it's not clear to me exactly who a sort of scaled down iMac with MacBook internals is designed to appeal to. One thing that does occur to me is the sort of the iPhone halo effect crossover that especially with Mac OS 8 and Mavericks coming, not Maverick, with Yosemite coming, that more than ever there's going to be this interplay between iOS devices and Macs with stuff like handoff, continuity, extensions, and so on. And so I think there's going to be more and more of a consideration of getting a Mac by iOS users who currently have PCs as their desktop or laptop computers. And among that market, I think, among the people that have been reluctant to buy Macs for one reason or another, I think that price has always played an important consideration. And I think having a very low level, for Apple anyway, entry-level Mac machine might be enough to convince people who are looking at PCs and looking at the price points, saying, "Okay, this might be the time that I'll move into a Mac."
Interesting point. The 1099, that seems to be, Jim, I think you were the one that said it, or maybe Mark, I'm sorry. 1099 versus 999. Is that Apple just trying to get that one extra little bit of margin for itself, like it always seems to want to do?
Well, I mean, if we remember, was it a year and a half, 2 years ago, they had an education market only $999 iMac, 21.5 inch. So they can hit that price point, and the hardware in this machine is not advanced. I mean, it's an ultra low voltage Haswell part. It's nothing expensive, but I think that they might feel constrained by the the MacBook Air lineup, because you've got the 899 11-inch and the 999 13-inch. So if you make this 999, and it's basically, there's a little bit of difference. You got the SSD in the MacBook Air and the hard drive here and the more RAM standard, but you're starting to create an interesting decision that consumers will have to make at a 999 price point, 13-inch Air versus a 21-inch iMac. So that might have played into it. But of course, margins are, I know Ted said that they don't care about analysts. Well, they do care about the stock price, and margins are important. But again, they're not going to sell a ton of these. They might be great for education and business, but as the broader part of their business, this particular Mac is not going to make or break margins for a quarter.
Mark?
Okay, I agree with that completely. I don't think this is a margin play. I think it just, when Apple releases a series of products, they have multiple iPads, iPhones, and Macs, there's a pricing structure. And the MacBook Air with the same components is $999. So adding the extra $100 on top for the much bigger screen, increased RAM, the included keyboard and mouse and trackpad and whatnot, it makes sense to add another $100 on top.
Okay, good point. One of my first reactions, and I think, Jim, you just said it, was that could this be the machine, and I'm not intending to disparage anybody, but for those workers who it's time to buy a new machine, they'd like to go Mac, but it's trying to pony up for one of the more significant iMacs is a bit much when they're just doing pretty simple word processing, email, maybe some web surfing, the typical office tasks. Is this a powerful enough machine to do that, to satisfy some people and still give them this beautiful 21-inch display? I mean, I know it's not a 27, but still, it's not a bad display.
Well, right now it is for sure. I mean, again, this is it's a stock low frequency part, but it turbos to I think 2.7. The 8 gigabytes of RAM is fine today. I mean, if you're going to do anything intensive, I'd recommend upgrading, which unfortunately you can't here. But I don't see any issue with productivity tasks and this product. And if you do need if you need a system running OS 10, this is probably a desktop system. This is the best bet for an integrated system. I mean, you could pick up a Mac Mini and a display, but that complicates things a little bit. With this, you get one machine, you put it on the worker's desk, you can deploy them all very quickly. It's a good option for that.
Ted, why now? I said that at the top. Is it just have the economies of scale changed? Have the prices for parts come down? Has Apple just developed enough engineering savvy to be able to produce this in mass if they need to?
I go back to what I said before. If there's a why now, I think partly it's because of the forthcoming Yosemite and OS 8 that are encouraging people to integrate Macs and iPhones the way they never have before. And so when you have that coming, having a lower price point machine, I think makes sense. I still, responding to some of the things I said before, I still have a little trouble figuring out who exactly is the ideal market for this, unless somebody really wants a 21.5-inch screen over a laptop screen. Because when I think, of the market that says, okay, this is a machine for people who do web surfing and email and not a heck of a lot more, and they don't really need the extra power that a fancier iMac would have. Okay, except I think that most of those people want a laptop. Those are the same people that want to be able to sit in the living room and check their email. Those aren't the people that want to be tied to a desk to do those tasks. So I'm not sure who are the people that prefer a desktop Mac and have very little demand for a machine. I'm not sure who they are. I guess we'll find out.
Kids? Teens? Or do they want to?
All the teenagers I know prefer laptops, so...
If not iPads and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting product at an interesting time to have come out, and of course we're all geeks, so we look and say, well, yeah, I'm going to spend the extra couple $100 and get the bigger, badder, faster machine. But I'm wondering if we're hitting a point where is that the way to sell machines anymore? I mean, because most people. I look around the non-geeks that I know, and they never even approach the limits of their machine, of any machine that they have, whether it's a PC, a Mac, even an iPad most of the time. So, is this a new play into a new area in some fashion? Mark?
Oh, I think I completely agree with Ted's point about iOS 8 and Yosemite integrating further with the Mac, so it's important to make the Mac more accessible, both software and now hardware-wise. As they've done in a long time. But I think another thing what they're doing is they're offering more customer choice. We're going to see that in the fall with multiple new iPhone screen sizes. I think they want to just hit all the different points on the checklist, being able to offer anything that a customer wants, and being able to take the board from an existing MacBook Air product and just put it in the iMac shells that they've been producing since 2012. Very good margins on that, and it's a no-brainer, I believe, from an operational standpoint. And I think they're going to make good money off of it. And I do think the college or high school or middle school, elementary school labs where they have rows and rows of these computers and other businesses and centers that have these things, I think it's really designed for those. So I think it's a good play.
Are we going to see cannibalization of anything by anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think if anything, this indicates that we're going to be seeing a higher end or new line of iMacs in the future anyways. And when Apple moves to Retina displays or new designs, like we saw with the Retina MacBook Pro in 2012, they retain an entry-level non-Retina, non-premium version of that computer with a lower price point. And if Apple's going to move to a really high resolution 4K display and a new design on the iMac range, they're going to have to hike up the price in order to stay at their corporate average for margins. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to keep around a lower end model. And to create additional differentiation, they'll have to make it more lower power, just as this new iMac is. So I think that, if anything, this indicates incoming new Retina iMacs are entirely new design rather than cannibalization of another product.
Well, that's interesting, Mark. If you don't mind, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because the timing of this, as we talked about, obviously they wanted to get it out in time for Yosemite and iOS 8, but I'm also curious because it's a Haswell part, and maybe Apple has clearly never been beholden to the latest technology in terms of like cutting edge Intel, but Broadwell's coming out in the next 6 months. I mean, Intel's come out and said that they were going to have it on the market for the holiday shopping season, so October, November. Broadwell would have been a better choice, I think, for a machine like this, better graphics, better performance, because they were stuck using this laptop CPU because they needed Intel HD 5000 graphics, which are not available on the desktop Haswells yet. So what do you think? I mean, do you think they're going to upgrade this to Broadwell? Do you think that Broadwell will relatively soon be the option for a system like this, or are they just going to, like they've done with the Mini, kind of throw this into the market, let that be the entry level, and pay attention more to the higher end models?
Yeah, absolutely the latter. They're going to keep this around for a while with the Haswell processor, and they'll stick the Broadwell in the higher end Retina iMacs whenever those come out in the next 6 months or 8 months or so. I think that using these Haswell chips, I mean, I believe that the boards, the internals of these iMacs are literally MacBook Airs hooked into the existing iMac shells. And they really make a boatload of margins by doing that. It's just, economies of scale, lots of operational thinking behind this. So I think, if anything, I mean, they're just making a boatload of money off of this from education sales. And, it's been seen in the past that making money and margins is a huge motivator for decisions Apple makes. As much as some people try to deny that, or some real big fans of the company try to ignore that, the truth is that Apple's about making the high margins, making a lot of money, and I think this is just another step in that direction.
I was just going to get back to the price issue that you raised. You said we were geeks, and the $200 price difference may not mean a lot to us. That is true in a way, and I have to keep in perspective how many people out there that aren't like us. I mean, I can look at an iPhone 5C versus 5S, for example, at $100 price difference and say, wow, to get the fingerprint technology, the better camera, a few other minor doodads that come with it. And I said, for $100, that's like, I expect to keep that phone maybe for 2 years. An average person will keep a phone for 2 years before they replace it. That's like $1 a week to get the better phone, and why not? It's $100. But a lot of, and especially if you can afford the money, if $100 is not something that's going to strain your budget, why not? But a lot of people view it differently, and I think correctly for them. A lot of people look at it, I don't care about fingerprint technology. I don't care about a better camera. The camera that the 5C has is more than good enough for me, and it's going to save me $100. That's significant for a lot of people. And so while it may not seem a big deal to us, price matters a lot for a lot of people, and that's always why you've always seen articles that said, get a PC instead of a Mac, because even though the Mac might be slightly better, the PC is $200 cheaper, and that's a persuasive argument for a lot of people.
There's also the spillover effect that a 1099, in other words, a lower end, lower priced Mac, will get people into the store. Whether it's the Apple Store or Best Buy or wherever. And then there's the opportunity for them to say, well, this looks good, but and it'll serve my needs, but maybe I'll step up one. Maybe I'll step up two. And so I don't think I think there's an effect there. My only concern is that we start to get too many models, and that the average consumer can start to get a little confused. And maybe I'm not giving the average consumer enough credit, but once in a while I'm in Best Buy and listen to the average consumer, and it gets a little scary at times because of how dependent they are on the salespeople in those stores to be told, what's good, what isn't.
I don't view Apple's products that way. Maybe I'm biased because I'm so imbued in the Apple community, but I still view them as all iMacs of gradated components. If you want a faster processor, get this one. If you want a larger screen, get that one. But you're still getting basically the same machine, as opposed to someone like Samsung that comes out with 16 different tablets that all have different serial model numbers, and it isn't clear whether one is why. Some of them might be exactly the same price, and it isn't clear why you want to prefer one over the other or what the differences are or anything like that. I think it's the multiple models in other companies is a totally different ballgame than what Apple does.
So I guess it'll be interesting. The stock didn't move much when this announcement was made, so I think there's a wait-and-see attitude out there. But at least it wasn't viewed negatively as chewing up or cannibalizing anything. So it may be a good time, and this would be just about the right time to release something to get it into the education market for next year. So, Mark,
absolutely,
yeah. Your point was well taken there.
Thanks.
Mark, just to follow up on that, though, I'm curious. Schools with iMacs versus schools with iPads? The iPad seems to be the big push and the hot, sexy thing in the education market right now. Do you think that is it a way to get people to go back to a Mac and maybe get a few more capabilities?
Absolutely, especially Ted's point with continuity in Yosemite. It would be an interesting concept that all these schools have iPads now, and then they can create iMac labs and further connect the iPad with the Mac. I think, as Ted was saying, this is the best time to do something like that, and especially with this new price point and with this Haswell chip and the new design. I mean, it's a recent design, this new 21.5-inch iMac. So I think so. I think they're looking to integrate them further. And then, like you said about the education timing, they're going to be starting their back-to-school education discount program in just under 2 weeks. So this is the perfect time. This is the time that people are buying for schools.
Educators out there, are you listening? I think we just gave you a real good reason to buy some iMacs along with some iPads. Maybe throw in an iPhone or two just for fun. Who knows?
And some iPods still.
Yeah, just create a shopping list and go to the Apple Store. You'll be.
And we don't work for Apple.
And we don't. Although some of us own stock, and that's nice to see, but that's a whole other show. Today's edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. This time around, let's talk about PDF Pen 6 and PDF Pen Pro 6, both for the Mac OS. I've had emails from viewers who ask why I rave about these two utilities, since PDFs are, to their way of thinking, somewhat immutable documents that are for viewing only. And that's true, if you don't have PDF Pen 6. But if you do, a whole new level of usefulness opens up. You can edit and correct text, create transparent backgrounds, perform OCR on your PDFs to turn them into text, insert, remove, and reorder pages, even capture PDFs directly from your scanner. You can resample images to reduce file size, an essential task when you're emailing your or anyone else's PDFs, crop pages, create tables of contents, import HTML websites, fill in form fields. I could go on and on. Need to annotate a PDF? Need to redact information so that it can't be seen? Secure it with 256-bit AES encryption? PDF Pen can do all of this and much, much more. Once you start to work with PDF Pen 6, you'll never look at PDFs the same way again. What were once locked down, read-only documents suddenly become as easy to manipulate as any text file, and that will change the way you work. I could keep reading you features from now until the end of the show, but it's much better if you try it yourself. And try it you can, for free. Download a free trial of PDF Pen 6 from smilesoftware.com and give it a shot. You will wonder why you waited this long. Then, buy from the Smile website, or if you want to be able to sync frequently used images, signatures, objects, and text via iCloud, get PDF Pen 6 or PDF Pen Pro 6 in the Mac App Store. PDF Pen, the all-purpose Mac PDF editor from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for sponsoring this edition of Mac Voices. Guys, the other thing I wanted to convene this jury on is not directly Apple related, but it's a hot topic right now. Sorry for the pun, and that's the Amazon Fire Phone. We can talk about the features, and I definitely want to talk about the features and get your reactions. In fact, let's start with that, and then I'll take it to a bigger picture. Ted, how about if we start on your side this time? Because I know you haven't had a chance to, or the inclination to even pay that much attention to the Fire just yet.
Yeah, I just started reading about it this morning, and then I had to go out for most of the day, so I know very little about it other than the press releases and a couple of articles I read. And I certainly haven't seen one. I haven't even seen a demo of one yet. So I hesitate to say very much. And anything I say, my caveat is I could decide I said something incorrect by tomorrow. So, but all that said, it looks to me like a phone that will be great if you want to buy things on Amazon, with the feature to be able to take a photograph or a barcode or a QR code or almost any way you can think of to get information about a device, and then they'll show you how you can buy it at Amazon's website. So that will be nice. The 3D feature didn't really wow me in any particular way. I'm not sure I would care whether the phone had that or not. And beyond that, it seems a very mixed bag of a sort of it has components that are several years behind the current technology, intermingled with these new features. And I don't really expect, and I don't think Amazon really expects from the statements that I've read, that to be to shake up the market, at least immediately, in a big way. It will appeal to a small number of people, and Amazon wants to get its foot in the door. And this might be their way to do it. We'll have to wait and see.
I agree with Ted completely on that last point, that this is Amazon saying that they want to get into this game too. They want their foot in the door. But I don't think this price point and the way this phone is being positioned as in the top of the market in the flagship range compared to an iPhone or Galaxy S5, which they actually compared the camera to during the presentation. So for getting your foot in the door into this extremely competitive and really split between two major players, Apple and Samsung phone business, going in at this price point, directly competing with those makers, is not a great idea. We'll see if Amazon proves us wrong and really makes a dent in the market. But I think if they were really trying to just get their foot in the door and then move gradually through a long roadmap over time, a lower price point and perhaps a less fancy device, less gimmicky device would have been the better approach for first generation.
Gimmicky device. That's an interesting assessment.
Absolutely. I don't see how the 3D functionality with the 4 cameras on the front of the phone is going to add anything to the market. I don't think that people are going to really enjoy it. I think people will use it once or twice and then it will get old. Just for me, the parallax effect in iOS 7, for when you move the phone around on the iPhone, the icons move around. I mean, personally, I have that off. It kind of gives me a little bit of a headache. So I don't think that people are really going to make use of it. It doesn't seem to add anything cool or useful in terms of functionality. Well, you see Apple, they're adding cool technologies lately that are actually useful. But this is not very useful in my opinion. And even developers that I've spoken to from major development firms, and you can see that there seems to be a lack of apps from major developers like there are on Samsung and iOS on this new Amazon phone. A lot of them are been put off by this 3D feature. They don't think it's even worth making applications for this phone because they don't think it's going to really catch on in the market.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in mostly agreement with what's been said. And my thought when Jeff Bezos was introducing that 3D feature was, as you said, Mark, I said, people think iOS 7 made them motion sickness. If you remember that mini controversy, I mean, this might, I haven't seen it in person, but this could be a whole new thing. But yeah, I mean, there's some interesting technology there, and perhaps that. As Bezos said, perhaps developers will take advantage of this 3D technology in ways that aren't apparent to us right now. But yeah, I just don't see it being something that out of the gate, it's not going to have great developer support, and that's what's going to take for it to get consumer adoption. And the price too. I was really happy when they introduced the Fire tablets and they led on price, because they are very decent products, and they were notably cheaper than their competitors. And I bought several of them and have used them, and they're fine. And I was expecting them to follow suit here, but to introduce it at effectively the same price as their competition, like as you said, Ted, unless you're a huge Amazon customer and you just buy everything through them, I don't see this being a compelling option. It's definitely not. I don't think it's going to affect Apple's business at all. But this is something that's going to take Android market share, if it takes any at all. So, that's. I hope they succeed. I always want more competition. I always want more ideas in the marketplace. But I don't see this phone at this price, doing anything significant.
Could you just explain more about the idea of you buying several of those Fire tablets? I assume you don't. I assume you don't get several of them yourself.
Well, what I mean is, so I do buy a lot of products just for the website because I like to experiment with them. But what I meant was I bought the first generation Fire, and then I bought the HDX last year, and then I bought the 7-inch, and then I bought the 10-inch, and I've given them as gifts, and my son uses one, and it's. That's what I mean. I don't just sit here, cuddling a bunch of Amazon tablets at night to go to sleep. So
that was sort of the picture I had at first. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah.
If that was your picture, Ted, I'm really glad you cleared it. I don't know. I think the point about this being a device to buy things from Amazon, that's great. I buy a lot of things from Amazon. It's not going to make me change. The camera fascinates me. It seems to be that's now becoming a big differentiator. And at some point, do you really need that camera? I mean, I guess if you're a professional photographer, if you're really into photography, I just have a hard time seeing myself changing my phone because of the camera. Sure, if a new iPhone comes out and it's a better camera, I'll be happy and that'll be great. But is that, honest to God, a real selling point between the iPhone, a Samsung Galaxy Tab, and this?
Well, it might be if you're coming from a clean slate and if you're buying a new smartphone and you want to have the best pictures. And if you're coming from the Android ecosystem and you can use some of those apps on the Fire platform, that's great too. But if you've already got an iPhone and you've had it for several years, and actually one of the graphs that just came out, I think it was Business Insider, showed that like something about 50% of all iPhone owners are going to be eligible to upgrade in the next 9 months, which will be the first 2 quarters of this next iPhone availability. They've had these phones for years. They've bought however many hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of apps. That's an incredibly difficult ecosystem to break out of. You're going to have to be really dedicated to a new platform to throw all that away and go to an Android-based product. So yeah, a camera in that scenario, I don't buy it.
Yeah, and I think that Apple tries to build on that. And, iPhones or smartphones, I guess as you're saying in general, are a different animal from desktop and laptops computers because of their price factor, especially when you get the discounted price for locking into a 2-year contract. So you can get a new iPhone 5C for $100. You can get some phones for free, essentially. When you're eligible for a new phone, it makes it very easy to switch from one platform to another. You're not deciding, should I spend $2,000 on a new fancy desktop Mac or something like that. So to prevent that sort of switching, one thing that the manufacturer, I think, wants to do is lock you into their ecosystem and make it so that it's either unattractive or undesirable or both to switch to a different smartphone, even though it would cost you next to nothing to do it when your upgrade price rolls around. And Apple, I think, has done a great job of that, and Samsung has done, and with their Android devices, have done a pretty good job of that as well. And I think, in that sense, as Jim pointed out, I think this new phone from Amazon will potentially have a greater effect on other Android devices than on Apple, because switching from one Android device to another isn't exactly leaving the ecosystem. Where going from an iPhone to an Amazon phone or vice versa would be a bigger deal.
Mark?
Completely agree with Ted's point that switching from a Samsung to the Fire phone would be simpler than moving from an iPhone. And it's to be seen when people start switching, people start getting this Amazon phone, how locked in they will become to the ecosystem. Because unlike Samsung, and like Apple, Amazon has an entire services and software and content ecosystem that the phone is built around. Just like Apple has the App Store, iTunes, and iCloud, Amazon has Prime Music, Prime Video, and just last week they launched the Prime Music streaming service. So I think people are, if they start using the Amazon Fire phone, they're going to get locked into that ecosystem, and we'll see a whole new, gold rush of Amazon being a bigger platform, just like they've been trying to do with the Fire tablets.
Okay,
True.
guys. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
I was going to say that's all true, but unlike Apple, well, in a certain degree, Apple, but I can get all those Amazon services on my iPhone. That's the thing. I think that
Right.
Amazon has that they lose some of that competitiveness there because I've got my streaming. I'm a Prime customer. I've got all those services on my iPhone, on my Mac, on my iPad. So yeah, I agree. It makes the phone when you open an Amazon product like the Fire TV or the tablets, and I'm assuming the phone, it's already preloaded with your info. If you're a Prime member, it has access to all those Prime services. It's a great experience, but it's not that in and of itself isn't necessarily a lock-in to going to any other platform, unfortunately. And I hope they never change that. I hope they don't get too powerful where they kind of bring that in.
True. Yeah, we'll see how it works out.
I agree as well.
Is anybody bothered by the fact that the phone is going to be watching you all the time with those 4 cameras?
Nah.
It's no different than one camera on any of the phones. And I don't know if it's watching you at all times. It's just like when you're in the specific 3D applications, as far as I know.
Yeah, none of us have seen this yet. So
Yeah, but I think this whole NSA government surveillance thing, in terms of people going crazy about it, it's a little bit blown out of proportion from a PR standpoint, from a consumer standpoint. So, yeah.
I think we've largely lost our privacy anyway. You
just have to realize that.
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to go back to the privacy that we had a couple of decades ago. And that's just the way it is. I mean, or even you can imagine a century ago where you can actually move to a new town and start up under a new name, and nobody could figure out that you didn't have a background from before you arrived there. I mean, things change. There are things you could do years ago that you can't do anymore because of how the technology has changed, and a degradation of our privacy is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not part of the tinfoil hat crowd most of the time, but this one just struck me as interesting. And Mark, you're right. I don't know enough, and I haven't had my hands on it to know just how often those cameras are on. But just the fact that they could be on if I forget and leave an app open, it's a bit different, I think, than having the cameras on the iPhone or one of the Android devices that are not queuing up. Now, which Android device is it that watches you, and if you aren't watching it, it stops playing or whatever?
It's one of Samsung's, I think.
Is it okay? So you have that issue. That all of a sudden now that they're watching you all the time, and that means they're watching everything else. And that, I admit, even for me, that starts to creep me out just a little.
So you don't want to take it into the bathroom with you.
Well, no, see, that's the thing is you want to make it so they don't want to watch. So see, every morning I get undressed in front of my Kinect sensor. And so whoever's watching on the other side of that thing, every day they throw up a little more until they just give up. And that's the key.
That's another image you've generated that I can
You curled up with all your tablets, undressing in front of the phone or the Kinect. It's just I don't even know where to go with that. I'm just going to let it go. So the lock-in, I think, is an absolute valid point, and it fascinates me. The app developers have done a pretty good job of crossing all the platforms and making most of the major apps that you want to work with on most of the platforms. We'll have to see how many of those can migrate to the Fire, but they probably will. So what does it take for someone to change their phone? I mean, and I'm going to go around each of you and ask, now I think everybody here is Apple-centric. Jim, you might be the sort of exception, I'm not sure, but what would it take for you to give up your investment in the learning curve of your phone, but more importantly, all the apps, the way you have everything set up, and switch over to a Fire or to a Galaxy Tab or something other than what you use now?
Well, I think it would have to be a killer service. If not, I mean, hardware obviously is there, but as we see Apple finally responding to the screen size concerns, a lot of the phones are matching hardware specs. So it's got to be a killer service. And one of the services, now this doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but one of the things that I would say, my parents are on iPhones and I might consider a Fire phone is Mayday. Mayday is an outstanding service. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to actually test it. I've used it on the Fire tablets. They answer the phone or they answer the request within 10, 15 seconds, and they're competent. They're competent support reps. I've tested it. I've feigned ignorance, and in one case, actually didn't know how to do something, and they were able to solve the issue every time. And that's a feature. And I think the Amazon. I don't know if you saw the press release for the press event for the Fire Phone, but they played a video asking people how to do things on their iPhone or their Galaxy phone, and they were they were all, I don't know how to set up Bluetooth. I don't know how to set up my work email. Having on the device 24/7 support, that's a killer feature that for some users who don't have specific app needs, who don't have specific hardware needs, that could be something that could cause them to consider a product like this.
Can Amazon scale that and keep that up?
They claim to. They claim to be, they said they hit a goal of 15 seconds to answer a request, and they're trending around 10. So, we'll see. If they sell 10 million Fire Phones, maybe not, but that's something that so far they've been able to do, and they're doing it very competently.
This from the company that never releases numbers on anything.
Right.
Sorry, I couldn't help that.
No, you're right. It's an interesting way they do that.
Yeah. Mark, what would it take for you to change your phone?
I don't know. I mean, I've tried moving to other phones before, but the thing that keeps bringing me back to the iPhone lately in the past couple of years is having all my information within their services, all my content. And I think the content and iCloud is really pretty much a lock-in. Also, the applications from the App Store are also far better, more intuitive. The phone always, to me, feels more reliable, smoother. Yeah, I mean, compared to Android, it could be sluggish sometimes. But, Android's getting there. It's about the services meeting Apple in terms of the intuitiveness. The iPhone is not the only device I have and people have. People also have Apple TV, iPads, Macs, and further with iOS 8 and Yosemite. And some stuff they've been doing with iOS 7, iOS 5, and iOS 6, they all integrate together. So leaving from one device would push you to leave from another device as well. So having an Amazon Fire and an iPhone, it's not very integrated. So if I moved from the iPhone to the Amazon phone, I probably want to replace my iPad with a Kindle Fire tablet and replace my Apple TV with a Fire TV, and that starts getting expensive. It's not just moving from one phone to another phone anymore. It's moving one phone, one TV, one iPad, one this, one that. So I think that the way these companies are set up is that they're creating their own mini ecosystems, each of them. Amazon has their whole flurry of devices, Apple has their set, Google has their set, Samsung's going to have their, trio of devices. So I think that whatever ecosystem you're in is just going to be built from that. It's just easiest and most cost effective to just continue where you are unless you want to make the whole change.
Ted, would you give up your iPhone?
No. I'd give you two answers. One answer is it's practically impossible for me, honestly, to conceive of how I would give up on Apple because of the long commitment. I bought my first Mac in 1984, and I have stuck with Apple ever since, largely because most of the time I thought they had the best products, and I still believe that they did, and I believe the iPad, for instance, is still the best tablet for me anyway that I could get, and I have no desire to switch to another one. And that's true for most of the Apple products that I have. And as a result of having stuck with them for so long, I am locked into the ecosystem, as Mark said, and it would be very hard for me to leave for that reason as well, because it would produce a cascade of effects where I'd want to get different hardware all down the line. And I'm quite content with the way it is. It's not like I am bemoaning the fact that I have all those Apple products and I hate them. What am I supposed to do? That's not the case at all. I really am quite pleased with it. And so even if there was a marginal improvement in somewhere, like suppose I really wanted a phone that had a larger screen than the iPhone's current screen, and I didn't think they were coming out with larger screens, that would be enough to make me feel a little regretful maybe that I can't get a larger screen, but I wouldn't suddenly turn around and say that's enough to get me to quit iPhones and move to a different platform. The only thing that I can imagine, and I guess this gets to the second answer now, the only thing that I can imagine that would get me to change would be a sort of building of things that another platform had that I increasingly saw as desirable that Apple couldn't match. So if I said, well, gee, that Samsung phone can do X, Y, and Z, and I would really find that useful, and I can't do that with my iPhone. and then next year it's X, Y, Z, and A, B, and C, and this this difference keeps growing to the point where there are just these things that I am demand that I be able to do, and I can't do them on my iPhone, so I'm going to have to switch to Samsung to get them. The trouble is, I can't imagine that ever happening, because if there were things that were that compelling that would convince me to do that, Apple would add them to the iPhone. And it's hard for me to imagine that Apple would let a competitor have that big an advantage for any length of time. So I basically come back, I guess, to decision one, which is I don't plan on ever leaving.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too. And I think, Ted, you're right. I think that we talk about all these other companies and how they're pushing forward, but Apple doesn't sit still.
Yeah.
And to Mark's statement about, I still love that. I want to use that, Mark. The gimmicky stuff. It does feel that way. It feels like, okay, maybe there are some three-dimensional interfaces that have some possibilities. From what I've seen and read of this one, this doesn't strike me as it.
No. I don't think it's going to make a big impact.
For anybody here, do the Prime services well, first of all, let's get it on the table. I'm an Amazon Prime member. Who else is?
I just joined this year.
I've been a member since almost the beginning of the program.
Mark?
No, I don't have an Amazon Prime subscription.
Okay. So I have it for the second day shipping.
Yeah.
That's why I bought it. The video thing is nice. I think I've used it twice, but it's not a big driver. The music thing is, well, so what? They've got 1 million songs, but if they don't have any that I want to listen to, who cares?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen a compelling Prime service that would make me say, wow, this is a deal breaker, or this is a huge incentive for the phone. And I'm curious to see if anybody here does. Ted, Jim?
Well, I like all the services. I think Prime Video, I don't know when the last time you used it was, Chuck, but it's gotten a lot better. They've added a lot more content over the last year or so. It's pretty good. The new music service is good too, although that means I've now subscribed to Beats, iTunes Radio, Pandora, Spotify. So, I'm not hurting for music. The lending library for Kindle is good. I'm a big Kindle customer, and that's a really nice feature where you can get a book for free every month and read it on your Kindle. But they're all great. But I go back to my point I made earlier. I can get them on my iPhone right now. I don't need to buy any Amazon products to use any of those services. Well, except the Kindle lending library. Even then, actually, no, I don't. I could just get it through my. Oh no, wait. The Kindle lending library, you do have to have a Kindle. But yeah, other than that, you don't need an Amazon product. So it's a great service. I love it. They've lost money on me from shipping alone every year, but it's not something that I see most people saying that's going to be the deal breaker. Although you do get a year free when you buy the Fire Phone, which is I think $110 value, whatever the cost of it is now. So that could be something, but yeah, it's not going to drive a lot of people.
Interesting. The Fire Phone as a loss leader that you pay for to get you into Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger story there as to why they offer almost all of their functionality except the Kindle lending library on iOS and the other platforms is because at heart they are a content company. They sell this cool hardware to try to grow their content business and get more content sales and more Prime subscriptions. For instance, the Amazon Fire tablets and some of the other Kindle products from earlier generations, they weren't making hardly any money on them. I believe they were even taking a couple dollar or $10 loss on some of the devices. That's Kindle Fire first generation, I believe. This Kindle phone is representing the first time where they're shipping a product at $650 and a $200 subsidy price, that they're actually taking a new route to make money on the hardware. So I think it shows a changing dynamic about what Amazon is trying to do and what their long-term vision is. They're moving out of content into hardware, and this phone is the first piece of Amazon hardware indicating that so far.
Yeah, I joined Prime, actually for me as well as my wife, not really to save money exactly, and in some sense I don't think we did, because we were pretty conscientious about going for the free shipping whenever we could. It was rare that we needed something in 2 days, and so we would put together $25, $30, whatever was necessary, and elect to get the free shipping. And so from that point of view, it never made sense for us to go to Amazon Prime. What do we need to spend $100 a year for to get free shipping when we're already getting free shipping, was our attitude. But at some point, I just decided it was worth a try to get the advantage of the 2-day shipping over the longer multiple-day shipping, and not have to worry about putting together $25 or more worth of products in order to qualify. And the effect that it has, which I think is wonderful for Amazon, is to make buying something much more of a no-brainer. You just look at it and you just know, you click here and in 2 days it's going to be in your house. And you don't have to think about what the shipping is going to cost, or whether you need to buy another product at the same time to get the free shipping qualified, or whether the shipping's worth it or not, or whether you should go to some other retail store down the block where you could get it without having to pay shipping, because you just know it's going to come and there's going to be no shipping charge. And so I think I'm actually buying more stuff at Amazon as a result of Prime than I did before, which I'm sure is exactly what music to Amazon's ears. And I'm liking it, so I'm probably going to keep using it. The videos have been largely a bust for me. The problem with the video is no matter what they have, something else I have has the same thing. Like I wound up actually watching Orphan Black, the first season, a TV show, on Amazon Prime. And then I discovered that I could have watched it on Comcast On Demand for free as well. And so I keep looking for what can I watch on Amazon Prime that I have no other way to watch it. There's a few things, but very little. And if I lost it tomorrow, it would be no big deal.
I'm with you, Jim. They're losing money on me too, even at $100 a year. It's because I look at something, I think, okay, I need this, and it doesn't have to be electronics. It can be, paper towels or something the equivalent of. And I can decide, okay, I'm going to go after work and get it, or maybe I'll go tomorrow. And if I just click, like Ted said, it's there in 2 days, and I don't have to worry about it. So,
well, they've backpedaled a little bit on this, but they used to have a pretty consistent policy where it was free 2 days, but $2.99 or $3.99 overnight as well for Prime members. And I once had an elliptical machine, like the big exercise machine, shipped overnight from Wisconsin to Cincinnati, Ohio for $4.
You broke the whole system.
Yeah, that's right. That's why they had to raise their price.
That was it. After that, they changed the rules.
I said, this is insane.
There's one in every crowd.
Thanks a lot, kid.
So now the rest of us have to pay whatever it is, the regular shipping, because you got the elliptical for $4.
You could have done it too.
Thanks.
And obviously, it really worked out for me. I use it every day, as you can tell.
Yeah. Along with cuddling up with your Kindles and your Amazon Fire tablets and all. Mm-hmm. Guys, this has been good. This has been interesting. Hopefully, we've shed a little light into it, or at least made some people think about some things. So, thank you all for serving on this edition of the MacJury. Jim Tanis, good to see you, Jim. Thanks so much.
That's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mark, it was great to have you join us for the first time. I hope you'll come back often.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And Ted, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me as well. I enjoyed it.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is the MacJury on MacVoices. We'll be back again with more soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at CashFly.com.